So we have implemented global error handling in Angular application using Interceptor in our previous video. And as discussed, we are going to see how to implement retry logic in the Interceptor. This is a very common problem that HTTP calls may fail due to any reasons. It could be that there are some network connectivity issues at client end, and also it is possible that Web API server has some temporary connectivity issues. It is quite a frustrating experience for a user if they keep getting errors due to such intermittent issues. So our Angular application should be able to retry at least for a few times before giving the errors to the client. Let's see how to implement retry logic in our Angular application next. So we have seen if our web API is down and if we try to log in our application, we get this unknown error. But this type of connectivity issue is very frequent. So we should retry at least 2 or 3 times to connect to the API before throwing this error from our interceptor. Angular provides us a few extension methods in the RxJS library that we can use to add retry logic here in our interceptor. So just before this catch error method, we can call retry method and pass the number of retries that we would like to perform on API endpoint in case of request failure. Let's make it a little larger value for this testing. If now we will try to log in, our Angular app will retry 10 times to call the same API request before giving the final error. If you look at the console, you can see our application is retrying the login endpoint again and again. And after retrying for 10 times, it will throw an error. But the problem with this retry method is that we are not able to tell what type of error our application should retry. For example, let me start the web API and try to log in into our application. If you look at the console, you can see our interceptor is attempting to call login methods 10 times, but this is what we do not want. We want to execute the retry method only when API server refuses to connect or down at the moment. We do not want to call a retry method in case of our API endpoint throw unauthorized error. So RxJS provides another extension method called retry when, and we can pass the callback function here to get the error. Let's define an anonymous function here only using arrow notation. Next, we need to check the status of this error. We need to use another RxJS operator where we should be able to create a loop if the error code is 0. We can concatenate multiple RxJS operators using pipe. Here we can use concat map to check errors. Let's define the type of this parameter as HTTP error response. And here in this function, we can check the error status. And if it is equal to 0, that means our web API server is not responding. In this case, we do not want to throw an error. Instead, we need to create a loop to call the API endpoint. And to create this loop, we should return the same observable using of operator by passing the check error here as parameter. Otherwise, we should throw error so that our catch error operator can catch this error further in the chain. So with this code, we have created a loop in flow to call the same API endpoint in case error is 0. And this loop will break only if error.status is not 0. I know this code may look confusing to you, but when you start to understand the concept of these RxJS operator, it will become easier for you to understand the code. Basically, here using pipe operator, we can intercepting the observable streams. And the beauty of this pipe operator is that we can use as many operator we want to use in a chain to perform different operations on observable data before passing it further in the chain. And in the pipe method, the output of the previous operator become the input of next operator in the chain. So we have created a retry loop for the specific type of error now. Our server is already running And if now we will try to log in with invalid user ID or password, retry should not be executed. Yep, there is no retry request in console. Let's shut down the web API and see if our retry loop is working fine or not. Yep, our app is now retrying to log in case of connection failure. And as soon as we will restart our web API, our loop will break and it will throw the unauthorized error. At present, there is no retry limit in our loop. Means our loop will keep retrying infinitely. But this concat method also provides us an option to get the number of count this method is called between retry. And here in the if statement, we can also check if the count is smaller than or equal 10, then only it will retry. Otherwise, the loop will break and it will throw an error. Let's shut down the API server and try to log in one more time. Yup, you can see this time the failed connection retried 10 times and it threw an unknown error after that. So we have working code and don't forget to refactor your code. We should not write so much code in our main method or main flow of the application. So let's move this code in a different method and call that method from here. Let's name it retry request and we need to get error as parameter here. And the type of this should be observable. And also we need to get the retry count here as parameter. And type of this is number. And this method should return an observable. And we can return here observable of error. Let's cut this code and paste it here in this method. Here instead of hard coding the retry count, let's use the retry count that we are getting from the parameter. Now we can call this method here in retry when. Pass the error we are getting from here as parameter and also pass the retry count. We can add comments here saying retry the request in case of error. This is good to keep adding comments on your code, but I always try to create our code in a way that we do not need to add so many comments to understand the code. Here in this method, further in this tutorial, we may need to add more checks here. Maybe we would like to regenerate fresh token in case of unauthorized request error. We can put the error code related to the unauthorized here, but these codes may be confusing for the new developer who are not aware of what 401 means, what is the meaning of status code 0 and so on. So Martin Fowler said it very well that any fool can write code that a computer can understand, but good programmers write code that humans can understand. So whenever we write our code, we should think in this way only. So instead of using codes directly here, we can define enumerator for these codes so that we can give these codes an understandable name. Let's add a folder to define enums. Add a new TypeScript file here. Use export as we need to use this enumerator in other TypeScript files as well. Let's call it error code. Now we can define the different types of codes here. So server down is equal 0 and unauthorized should be 401. Now we can use these enumerators in place of these static codes. You can see how clear it is. Even if we do not put these comments above this code, anyone can understand that what our code is doing. Next, we can refactor this more. We do not need to use this condition in every if block. We can define if statement on the top and check if count is smaller than or equal 10. And we can remove count check from these different if statements. And we can put all these if statements under the main if. But so much nesting also make our code confusing. Better we use switch statement here for the purpose, and we can use check error dot status as switch. Then we can put the different cases to check if status is server down. We can remove these if statements, and we can put as many cases here for different status like this. You can see this code is much more readable by humans. I do not want to create a loop for this unauthorized error for the moment. Let's comment this code and let's test it. Shut down the API server and see if our code is still working as it was working just before this refactoring. Try to log in with invalid user ID and password. Yep, it is retrying. And if I switch on the API server, yep, loops get break and unauthorized error is thrown. So our retry logic is working perfectly. Let's implement the validation check next so that someone should not be able to register with a blank username and password. Hope you would already have done this as an exercise, but let me show you how I did this. Maybe you may have a better idea. You can suggest in the comments if there is some better way to do this. So go to the account controller, and here in the register method, we will check if the username is null or empty. We can check it using string class. It provides us various methods that we can perform on any string. We can use isNull or empty method to check if our login request dot username is empty or null. We can use the trim method to remove any white space we get in the username. We want to return an error in case any of one is blank, either username or password. So similarly like this, we can check password as well here in this if statement. Let's move it to another line so that we can make it more readable. And if any of these are blank, we need to return a bad request from the API endpoint. Let's copy this code as we want to return the object of API error as error response. Set the error should say username or password cannot be blank and return this API error object here. That's it. Let's try to register a user with blank user ID or password. Yep, we are getting this error. And when we try to enter a blank password, then also we should get an error. Great. So our logic is working fine. But if we look at this code, this string.isNull or empty is making our code unreadable. What if we could have checked if the user name is empty like this, username dot is empty. We cannot add a function on this existing string type, but C# provides us an option to add extensions method that can be applied on any type on the fly without even modifying or deriving the existing type. Let's add a new extension. We already have created a folder for extensions where we had added an extension for the middleware. Add a new class here. Let's name it string extension. There are few rules we need to follow to create an extension method. First one is extension class should always be a static class because we should not be able to instantiate this class. And as class is static, all the methods under this class should be static method only. Our method will return boolean and it should check if a string is empty. And the second rule to add an extension method is that the first parameter of this method must be the type on which we need to apply the extension method, and it should be preceded by this keyword. We can give any name to this parameter. Let's keep it short. Now as we need to return boolean value if this string is null or empty, let's also trim the string to remove the additional white spaces. That's it. Now we can use this method on any string type. So in our controller, instead of using this string class, we can just use isEmpty extension method like this to check if it is empty or not. Similarly, you can use it on password as well. Let's verify if it is working fine or not. And if we try to pass a blank password, yep, we are getting this error saying username or password cannot be blank. And if the username is blank, yep, we are getting this same error. Let's try to add new user with the all correct information. Perfect, it is successfully added. So this is how you can use extension method to add new functionality on existing types without even modifying them. In our next video, we will start to integrate this form with our backend. We will add new API endpoints to store and retrieve the information of this form. So see you in the next video. Stay tuned. Bye bye.